Welcome to tonight's X-Space by Digital Agenda Forum. I can see the panelists are logged on. I know Mark is listening in. Maybe we can activate his rights to speakership so that he's able to unmute at the time. My name is 𝗫𝗡𝗢𝗛𝗛𝗓. I am a data scientist, and I am the moderator for today's interesting conversation on immigration, xenophobia, and digital ID. And so we're here to find out what is the real agenda. So I'll give a preamble to this conversation as we prepare to get started. So we've witnessed that immigration has become one of the biggest political and security issues in the world today. A case in point, in Ukraine, where we've seen a couple of people displaced across Europe. And we've also been able to see or to hear about the conflicts in Sudan, in the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as the Sahel region, because of a couple of people seeking refuge in the neighboring countries and beyond. And as a result of this, governments across Europe, North America, and Africa have started tightening the border controls as migration continues. But you notice that this migration is as a result of a couple of challenges, something to do with the wars, economic hardships, climate-related issues, and the likes. And as a result, there have been a couple of discussions and conversations on national security, on sovereignty, on humanitarian responsibility, and these have become very intense. But at the same time, we have a public opinion on immigration, and this is divided, in a couple of countries. Unemployment, high cost of living, security concerns have fueled anti-immigration sentiments as well as xenophobia. A case in point, in South Africa, we have these renewed attacks on foreign nationals in a campaign that has been named Operation Dudula, that have brought immigration back into the spotlight. And we've also seen in the United Kingdom, as well as across Europe, immigration has remained a dominant political issue. And as a result, governments have introduced stricter border controls, and these have been brought about alongside digital systems. An example is the European Union's entry and exit system, where we have biometric identity verification, where we have electronic visas, and we also have AI-powered management systems in place at the borders. So this trend is spreading far beyond Europe. Around the world, governments are investing heavily in digital identity systems. They are investing heavily in facial recognition systems, biometric technologies. For example, South Africa, that has shifted away from the legacy green ID books to an intelligent population register that is being enrolled. And so how is all this relevant to Uganda? When you look at Uganda, we've had discussions just the past weekend, to be specific, on Sunday, where we had a sudden digital service disruption. And this affected MTN Uganda, where we have so many subscribers in the country. And at the same time, it affected the Stanbic Bank. So the outage occurred right at the time when calls grew across Uganda and other African countries to boycott South African-linked business in retaliation to the renewed xenophobic attacks that are happening in South Africa, which is similar to the past unrest that we had in Nigeria, where we had South African countries like companies like ShopRite, which were targeted. Of course, there is no evidence in terms of linking the Ugandan network outage to the boycott, but the timing is really paramount in this case. And so this serves as a stark reminder of how dependent everyday life has become on centralized digital systems, on the shift to cashless, and also the vulnerable citizens, at the end of that day when these systems fail or when they are manipulated. And so tonight we are here to ask the simple question: as governments invest in tighter borders, in digital IDs, in AI-powered systems, in biometric technologies, what is driving these changes? Is it national security? Is it administrative efficiency? Is it economic modernization? Is it technological progress? Or is there some broader transformation in how states are managing identity, mobility, and access to services? And so to unpack this conversation, I am joined by three distinguished panelists who will be sharing their perspectives. So I will request them to unmute, to briefly introduce themselves, but also for me to confirm that they are able to hear me. So I'm joined by 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗣𝗛𝗔 𝗵𝗓𝗛𝗔. 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗣𝗛𝗔, kindly unmute and greet us.
Good evening, Miss 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗣𝗛𝗔. Thank you for having me today. My name is 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗣𝗛𝗔 𝗵𝗓𝗛𝗔. I am a travel consultant and the director of 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗣𝗛𝗔 Limited, an agency that deals with ticketing, airline ticketing, visas, and accommodation and tour packages around the world. And this topic affects us because with the immigration issue, we are directly affected as a business, and I'm very happy to be here this evening. Thank you.
Thank you so much, 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗣𝗛𝗔, for joining us. And 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗢𝗛𝗔 will be sharing from the human face of immigration perspective. I'm also joined by Mark Nasasira. Mark, please unmute. Okay, I can't see Mark on the call yet. Mark, if you're under my hearing, you could request for speaker rights so that you're able to speak. And as that is happening, I'll move on to Stephen Bongomin. Stephen, please unmute and speak to us.
Hello. Can you just confirm I can be heard?
Yes, you can be heard.
Oh, great. Good evening, everybody. My name is Stephen Bongomin, and first, I'm very grateful to be back here again. It is my second time being a panelist in this space. The first time I was about a year ago when we were talking about the digital agenda and how it's affecting the young people in Uganda. As I said, my name is Stephen Bongomin. I'll introduce myself as a youth leader for these spaces purposes. I participate actively in elective politics, especially in the youth structures, which concluded last year. And in this space, I'll be sharing more from the perspective of the young people, and also from the political perspective, how this topic is very, very timely and prominent at this moment. And I can't wait to engage more with the distinguished panelists, hear more from them, learn from them, and also give my views as I see part. For now, I would love to submit for now, and can't wait to get into the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stephen. It's good to have you again on the call as a youth advocate leader. And so Stephen will be also sharing public perception, but specifically the youth voices. So the president of Uganda has referred to the youth as the country's greatest asset in his most recent manifesto. And I guess this perspective is very important for us in this conversation. So Mark Nasasira will introduce himself shortly, but Mark will be sharing from the perspective of governance, public policy, and most importantly, the spiritual perspective. What has God said about this in the biblical view of it, but also do we have the voice of God crying out in the wilderness somewhere? So Mark will share from that perspective. So thank you very much, Joanita, Stephen, and Mark, for joining Digital Agenda Forum on this conversation. And we will get into the conversation right away. So my first question is to you, Joanita, from the travel perspective, or the immigration perspective. So around the world, we've seen that immigration has become one of the biggest political issues. And in some places, we've seen the rising of the xenophobia. So from your experience as a travel consultant, and in the travel industry, how is this changing the travel and tourism, and also the way people are treated across the borders? Over to you, Joanita.
Thank you, Claire. I think in regards to the question, I think we need to first explain what xenophobia is. Xenophobia is some sort of racism, but this is directed to a certain group of people. And how immigration has become one of the biggest political issues, and in some places we've seen rising xenophobia. That's very true, because one, I believe we are living under the fact, the sense that, you know, the systems have become easier. And it's true. It's easier to obtain visas now. It's easier to apply for the visas now. It's much easier. It's faster. It's smoother on our side during the application. It's less tedious. It's convenient, you know. When we go to instead of going to the embassies and making the long queues, now it's just clicks on the computer wherever we are. And especially in the times now, like we've had a pandemic, or when we had COVID-19, and this is when the systems were really, you know, they really became very important, because face-to-face and human interaction was limited. So the systems look like the solution, and they are very good. However, systems fail. Maybe because they're overwhelmed by the volumes. I don't know the science really, but they usually do. And when they do, this is a setback to us. Claire, you've mentioned Sunday, there was a blackout on MTN and banking. Now, imagine all the people who had deadlines to pay for their visas, who were applying for their visas, and maybe the visa is short notice, and suddenly there's a blackout. You just can't. We could say it was a weekend, the embassies were not open, so it's not an excuse. But however, the systems have setbacks. And while they are very good, I still believe, because I'm talking about the human face of immigration, I believe the human interaction is still very, very important. And also, we notice that, you know, with all these systems being there, very many people are on the system trying to practice how to apply for the visas, how to gain expertise, or some people are just bored and just trying to put in all these things, and the systems are generating all these things, which slows it down for the actual user who is really intentional about using it. So I believe while it has made the work more seamless, faster, easier, it's also making it a little bit difficult to obtain a visa. And then also, in countries where there's developed technology, you know, sometimes it takes, with the system which looks like, usually they'll tell you 3 to 5 working days after you submitted the application. But the reality on ground is that time, that will not be the response time, yeah? And sometimes by the time they are responding, you've missed the opportunity, you can't fly out. And also, maybe it was an interview, a wedding, anything, because tourists travel for all sorts of things. Some people are tourists, some people are business people, others are students going to study, or maybe for a conference. And by the time the system is responding, the opportunity is almost gone. And we all know you can go to email them. And now I notice that before you would email and get a response from a human being, but these days when you go to contact the embassy, sometimes you're being responded to by an AI bot. And these are the few things that make me question, are we ready for this digital, to go entirely digital, or we still need the people there. And that has been the challenge on our side, on our travel side, because that's why it gets complicated. Before you go to the embassy, make an appointment and just go to the embassy and follow up physically. But now it's all automated. And also, the other thing about this is when you're applying for visa, sometimes when you go and you're talking to someone, they would feel your heart, right? That you're genuine, that human interaction. However, these days the systems are designed that you are flagged off. I think that there's AI that just flags off. Now, for example, in 2020, Ugandans were blocked from going to Dubai, to the UAE. So as long as your application was Ugandan, it was an automatic dismissal, no matter what you were doing, And this is, it's a setback. It really stands in the way. It stands in the way of immigration, because people now cannot move freely, because suddenly a country or a nationality has been red listed. And there is nowhere you can go. It's as simple as Ugandans are not coming. You can't talk to anyone about it, because now it's systems. It's not going to the embassy and explaining yourself and trying to get these people to listen to you to make exceptions. It's now systems. So, while all these things are happening, I believe also travelers become more anxious, because at border control, just because you have a visa, you can still be denied entrance, even with your on your name. And when you get there, your fate is already sealed. Suddenly you can't travel because there's a comment on your name. And I see immigration is becoming a global pool, whereby if a comment is from Uganda, anyone in the world can see it. And imagine you're a political fugitive, and maybe someone just put that comment. Recently, there was a lawyer who was coming into the country to defend a certain political figure, and they were denied to come in. They were denied to come into the country. And these are the things that, suddenly I feel like it gets weaponized at a certain point. So the conversation is, at what point is this going to be fair? At what point is it going to be fair to all of us, whereby governments are not using this as a tool of control, of control, with all our biometric data being collected. Before, passports were just, before passports were just, it was just a passport number, a face that confirms that it's your face. And then, of course, it had passport number, face, name, surname, given names, date of issue, place of birth, country of issue, and expiry date. Now we are going to biometrics, right? We're having irises, scans, fingerprints, and it brings the other question. Is our data safe? Are our governments doing enough to protect our data? So it brings me to that point where I believe we just pray and trust that the government is doing its part to protect us, because at a certain point, if a criminal gets this information, then I believe we are doomed, because while the border checks are becoming stricter, even the criminals are getting more sophisticated. Every day they're working on ways on how to beat the systems. And when you notice the incidents, they get more unfortunate and more unfortunate, and the damage is really wide. Unfortunately, the examples I have, I'm not at liberty to give here, because, immigration is a sensitive issue. But in this, we notice that, holidays are cut short when systems fail. Students miss out on their conferences, on school activities, sometimes semesters. Businesses are stalled, opportunities are lost in this. And also, fear is changing how countries welcome visitors, you know? Fear is changing how countries are welcoming visitors. And for me, I believe while we are advancing.
All right. As we get Joanita back onto the call, I will bring in Stephen. First question to you is, maybe you could mute for a second. Why have immigration debates become so emotionally charged, especially among the young people? And how can we separate genuine concerns from fear, from misinformation, as well as manipulation? Yes, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. First, I want to apologize again to the listeners for my small technical glitch. I'm having power breakout in my area. I don't know why. So yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi. So when electricity goes off, my Wi-Fi goes off, and I have to go to data. So I'm having that. So apologies on that, and I hope I don't get disrupted again. But if I do, please bear with me. Thank you for that question, and good evening again to our listeners. To your question, when you ask, immigration is causing a lot of debates which have become emotionally charged among the young people, especially in Uganda. And I think if we have all, I don't believe any of us lives under a rock, and we have been around social media in the past 1 month or so, where we have seen rise in tension, in xenophobia in South Africa, which I see has become the face of xenophobia in Africa and in the world. Some people, I saw someone comment on social media the other day that they first got to know the word xenophobia because of South Africa, and I'll talk more on that as we proceed, how xenophobia can affect the image of a nation. So we must first understand what is the root cause of xenophobia, especially among the young people. Because as you can see, it's the young people who are protesting on the streets of South Africa and anywhere else in the world for the immigrants who they are calling the illegal immigrants to leave their country and go back to their country and develop their country. One of the reasons is economic pressure, unemployment, jobs and opportunities. The citizens usually claim that the foreigners are taking away their employment opportunities, their job opportunities, and this has left them unemployed and unable to fairly have a chance in the economy. And we also have to bring it back and relate to Uganda. In Uganda, as you know, we are a very diverse nation, and one of our international, as a country, we have an open door policy for all refugees. What does this mean? As long as you're a refugee in the world, Uganda welcomes you. Where, be it you're from South Sudan, be it from DRC Congo, be it from Kenya, wherever you are, as long as you're a refugee, you just enter Uganda and we shall grant you a refugee status and even go ahead and incentivize you, give you probably where to sleep, give you food and try and accommodate you and so we live in a very diverse society with so many nationals. And I don't know if you were there around last year, when there was a spike, even in Uganda, of people complaining about the Eritreans, Somalians, and all of these nationals who are staying along, I think Gaba, Kabalagala, all that area. And if you walk there, that place looks like small Eritrea, and the young people had started raising out their voices. And one of their concerns was high cost of rent, that these Eritreans are coming and increasing the rent. Hence, the locals can no longer have access to these services. So you can even see in Uganda, there is a risk for these xenophobia tendencies, which we must rebuke immediately. So other reasons is housing, as I'd said, and you know, we are in the social media era. Social media, Twitter, it amplifies these voices, and sometimes these voices can be misinformation. You know, we have to be very careful on knowing what is true and what is not true, because we have to know what is true and what is not true, because in this era, it's hard to verify your sources. Someone can just take a video and put a caption and really twist the whole story. So it's very important to know whether it is really whether it's really xenophobia, whether it's really hate, or it's genuine, or it's just someone trying to put out a narrative that is very divisive to the populace. So we must also understand, as I said, we must also differentiate between discussing immigration policy and promoting hatred among people. Because as a country, we must also respect, as a nation, every country has its laws and a constitution whereby every citizen must abide, be it a citizen or a non-citizen. So if you go to South Africa and you're illegal, you don't have the papers, the citizens have a right to call for you to leave the country because you're there illegally. So to a degree, the South Africans have a case to make. But where they go wrong is how they are implementing their cases. Because as citizens, when you have any discomfort, you protest to the government. You don't go on the streets and harass human beings. It is not in your constitution, so it's important to understand the immigration policy and promoting hatred. So I understand all the concerns of the citizens are valid, and we must take it into account, be it in South Africa, be it in Uganda, or wherever citizens are raised concerns of immigrants taking away, causing discomfort in the community. But where the citizens go wrong is taking the laws in their hands and harassing these immigrants and beating them, scolding them, robbing their shops. That is where they go wrong, and that's where we see what is happening in South Africa. That's where that's where my point of contention comes with them. So whereas they have a strong point and reasons which they have rights to demonstrate about, but how they are going about it is totally wrong. So we must also understand. We should also know the important facts, empathy, and responsible conversations. We must have responsible conversations like what we are having right now. We must understand what is agitating the young people. What is causing this rise of xenophobia? Because just when you see xenophobia, and I don't want it to be talk only about South Africa. This is something that is occurring all over the world. Even when you look at USA, there is a rise of nationalism and right-wing politics, whereby we see, even we see the President Donald Trump. If you followed American politics, he has always wanted to build a wall on the border between USA and Mexico because of immigrants immigration. He didn't want the migrants from Colombia, from Mexico to cross into the country illegally. And there is if you've followed American politics or you watch CNN, you know what they call ICE. ICE is an American unit that is used to hunt down illegal immigrants, and have been in action for the past 2 years in the US, hunting down immigrants in the US, chasing them away. And this is also in Europe. So this is not a problem that is unique to only Africa and South Africa. So it is important that we start having conversations, honest conversations, hear the opinions of everyone on the side of the aisle. Let's sit down, understand your grievances. How can we solve this? But one thing we cannot resolve to is unlawlessness, breaking the law, breaking the constitution. And by this I mean like beating citizens, looting, harassing citizens. There is a place where we shouldn't go. We should always respect the laws of the nation, and that we can always find solutions to whatever problems we are facing or whatever grievances facing, and we must be very wary about actors, political actors. We always use such things as political tools, where they ride on the emotions of the disgruntled citizens, and promote hate and divisions. We must always be very wary of such politicians or leaders or any actors in the community who is using such thing to probably elevate themselves and also cause division in our society. So, with those words, I hope I've answered your question in depth, and I look forward to more conversations. Thank you. I beg to submit.
Thank you, Stephen. I want to bring back Joanita, and I hope, Joanita, you can hear me now. Please confirm.
Yes, Claire, can you hear me?
Yes, you're very audible. Thank you. So I'm going to bundle these two questions together, because I know you made a submission partly on my first question. And my first question is, beyond the travel, identity has become central to modern border management. So you see today most countries require biometric passports. They require one to do facial recognition, fingerprint verification, and have an electronic visa. But the question is, how has the traveler's identity changed over the past decade? And as you answer or respond to that, the second question is that the governments argue that these technologies, the likes of facial recognition, the likes of fingerprint verification, so those technologies, the argument around is that they improve security, and at the same time they reduce on fraud. But from your perspective as a travel consultant, what have you observed? How is this? Please go ahead.
Thank you very much, Claire. Beyond travel, this modern border management has shifted from machine readable passports to now we are having the biometric passports. And yes, there's facial recognition, fingerprint verification at immigration, and yes, electronic visas. But like I submitted before, the problem is not these systems. The problem is the infrastructure that carries them. I think that's where my issue is, the infrastructure that carries them. Because we've seen a shift from paper documents to digital identity. Now our national IDs are supposed to be biometric cards. Unfortunately, mine is not yet readable, but you see that's the infrastructure that has been put in place. Before, like I was explaining earlier, the passport had the main features: your face, your passport number, your Facebook was on the photo, your name, your date of birth, the place of issue, the date of issue and expiry. And now this iris, the eyes are being read, the fingerprints are being taken. And this makes impersonation harder. However, these are permanent records. Like I can never change my fingerprints. I cannot change my eyes. And once that information is out, I do not have control over it. And while the system is very good, I know Ugandan government has a Data Protection Act. And I pray, all we can do is pray and hope that it's being implemented and our data is safe. But biometrics are absolutely becoming the new standard everywhere world over. It's global. Digital verification before boarding is being incorporated in almost all airports. And the ones that have not yet incorporated it is because of the infrastructure right now. But 10 years, maybe 5 years, that's where we are all headed at the airports. You know, because we've all seen self-checking, self-checkout at immigration. And this can only be through these biometrics, right? Then the interconnected immigration databases are already a norm. It's a pool of information, but my issue is control. Who's controlling this pool? How safe is it from criminals who may want to hurt us? And also there's, on the good side, there's faster processing, but also there's greater reliance on the technology. The same technology that sometimes fails. Now imagine if the airport, let's say Entebbe International Airport was being supplied, internet by MTN Uganda, Sunday, the entire airport would be down because the systems would be off, right? So I hope that answers the second question. And the third question was, government argue these technologies improve security and reduce fraud. From what I have observed, yes, absolutely. It's easier now. Fraud is reduced because you take your fingerprint and your eyes and, and there's improved security screening. That's absolutely true on the positive side. However, on the negative side, data privacy concerns. How safe is our data? And this is data. My concern is, before with the machine readable passports, you could go and get another passport and maybe you become fatter or smaller or older, and that has changed. But now these are fingerprints. The biometrics are permanent. And also there's a concern for those people who do not have, I have experienced tea pickers, they do not have fingerprints. What are they using to get national IDs? How is this? Because they're going to come and try to put in their fingerprints and they're going to be rejected. It's the same person, but the fingerprints are faded because of the work that they do. So what happens at this point? What is the second measure? I think we always need to have a plan B, an contingency plan, that when this fails, there's a parallel plan that comes into play immediately. And so for me, Claire, that's my submission on this.
Thank you so much, Joanita. And I think you've preempted the follow-up question that I had of how do the next 5 to 10 years look like? But it looks like we're more likely to have greater automation with these systems in place. So I want to bring in Mark. Mark, kindly unmute and confirm that you can hear me.
I can hear you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. So much earlier, you had not yet introduced yourself. Maybe we could use the moments for you to introduce yourself, and I'll proceed with my question.
Thank you very much. Sorry, I had to come on a little bit late because of the system. Very ironic that when we're talking about systems and the digital era, I become victim of the the flows that come with the advancement in technology. But I've been on and I've been listening. My name is Mark 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗛𝗅𝗑𝗡𝗢𝗅. I am a lawyer. I am a theologian. I have been more invested in policy framework. I have been invested and I do consultancy in that arena. But also I do political analysis on different issues internationally and regionally. And I am very interested in this conversation, and I have been listening keenly to the conversation as it has been going on, and I feel like it's a good conversation. And I'm glad to be here, and welcome to every other listener who's on the space. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. We are glad to have you. So my question to you in the moment is, many countries appear to be strengthening their own borders and national identity. And at the same time, we are seeing the rise of interconnected digital identity systems. So could there be a tension between maintaining distinct national identities and creating systems where identities become globally connected?
Well, for starters, one of the things that has been a tool or has been very important for the existence of humanity and the advancement of humanity has been the diversity of man. The difference in humanity, the difference in human beings has been one of the critical factor that has helped man to stay for this long. And it is in the shaping and the way God has created us that we are different and placed us in different spaces. So for starters, there is very solid evidence, so to speak, that the diversity in different nations has been very important, and the importance of nations being different. and being independent has been very crucial in the sustenance of man so far. So the national spirit or nationalism that some people want to speak ill about is very important, that nations are distinct. Like you said, nations have to be distinct because nations are called and nations are set on or have a different calling or purpose in the fulfillment of man. And whether it's from a biblical perspective or from political perspective, different countries have been, for a different purpose and for a different time, have been important or instrumental in the sustenance of the world and the sustenance of human life or humanity. So it is important that we maintain the borders that we have. It is very important that nations adhere to the creation or to the formation of these nations. Well, there are people who argue and say the nations that we have, especially for Africa, the nations we have are a creation of a white man, are a creation of a human being, but over and beyond that, or if you go before pre-colonial times, we had nations that took a form that is probably different from what we have now, or the borders were different from where they are drawn now. But the fact is that there were nations and they were distinct even as they are today. So even when you look at the different regions in Africa, for example, and if I were to take an example of Uganda and you look at the different kingdoms that we have had in the past before colonialism, those were nations. Those were nations that were divided in their own way, and they were called, or they were assigned divinely different assignments and duties that they were doing. So it is a wishful thinking in my thinking. It's very wishful for anybody to think that they can get off or to get rid of nations. And if I were to borrow from the theological bit, even from time immemorial, God created. When you look at Genesis, you look at Abraham being told you need to leave the country of your fathers. That signifies that there were countries, there were nations, and so they've consistently been. And I do not think that the creation of digital space or the advancement of technology can break down the spiritual connotation or the spiritual attachment of nations and states. Yeah. I hope that answers the question.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mark. So I have a follow-up question to that. You said the nations have different purpose, whether from the biblical perspective or the political perspective. And so my follow-up question is more inclined on the ethical and faith angle. So what should we consider when human beings create systems that are capable of identifying, tracking, and managing populations on an unprecedented scale?
First of all, the question of profiling, I would like to say profiling people, and the question of how the advancement is looking into that direction. The question that for me is more pertinent is, what is the purpose? Because what I have learned over time is that what the real purpose is and what is being sold are usually two different things. And therefore, the question for us is, what is the purpose of this endeavor of digitalizing humanity and identity? The purpose is certainly not to ease or security. The purpose is not all that, because to differ a bit from the previous speaker, I think to say that security has become better and all these things have become better because of this system is a bit I wouldn't say it's entirely wrong, but I would not entirely agree with it, because the people who actually beat the systems, or the people who actually are restricted or create the mayhem that we see, actually beat the systems. They're not the target for these systems. The targets for these systems are everyday people who are actually not a threat to whether it is security or immigration. The people who actually are a threat are the people who are able to beat the systems as they are built, because first of all, they are the engineers of the system. So the people who are advancing some of these things, the core purpose for this is to create a global, like they say, or throw it around, a global village, to create a unified humanity and to get rid of the diversity. Because look, if I want to dominate a particular society, one of the first things I will do is to identify and to name or create the given society in a uniform structure, so that I do not have to labor to take on different centers of power or different spaces. So what I have to do is, if I want to dominate a society, all I have to do is to make sure that every member of the society falls in a particular mold, so that whatever system I roll out is able to affect all of them, is able to hold them captive in a particular way as I have rolled it out. So that's exactly what is happening. What is happening is you have people who want to get away the diversity. So for example, you have systems where you know that digital currency, digital money will probably not work in a region like Africa as effective as it will work in places like Europe or America, because people are largely in some of those places capital. They deal with cash. When you come to Africa, we have just yet to get onto the cash system. And so there's a lot of subsistence living. So it is very hard to say, if you do not play by this book or play by this rule, then we will squeeze you into a particular mold, because then I do not need money. It falls in this same space, that what you have right now is an attempt to get rid of the diversity in humanity and have human beings molded in a particular shape or form, so that if there is a group of people, or the people that are rolling this out in the background are able to call the shots or to determine what is going to happen to humanity without much effort, like they would do if there is that diversity. That if you want to dominate Africa, it's not the same way you're going to do it if you're dominating Europe. And to really to labor this point home, I would give you a perfect example of how colonialism played out on the African continent, and especially, again, to make it very relevant to Uganda, I'll give you an example that you had to have the laws that were brought in that defined the system of how things would be, and so you'd have to have a nation like Uganda created, and then you'd have to have laws that would create a uniform dispensation or legal regime that encompassed all the hitherto independent nations, so that you have, whether it is Bunyoro or Buganda or it is Busoga, they now fall under a unified factor called Uganda, and they are defined by the laws that are uniform. And by that, then the colonial master is able to determine or to subjugate or dominate them, because then they are uniform, and whatever he decides to do can affect all the peoples.
All right. So let's get back to the voice of the youth. Stephen, I hope your network is more stable.
Yeah, can you just confirm I can be heard?
Yes. So I will put two questions to you. So as young people become the most digitally connected generation today, The question is, are they sufficiently aware of how digital identity systems, biometric data, and online platforms may shape their future? Yeah. Are they digitally literate beyond just using the technology? Do they have an understanding of personal data, of digital footprints? Are they aware of privacy, data protection? To mention but a few. And also the other question is, as Africa is moving towards greater digital integration, how can then young people ensure that technology remains as a tool for empowerment, not one that is becoming a system that limits opportunity, that limits participation or freedom? Over to you.
Okay, thank you very much, moderator, and I would love to welcome my fellow panelist, Mark, for joining in and for his strong submission. And I really did enjoy that, and it was very informative from his point of view. And I would love to also welcome the new listeners. It's never too late to join in. So to answer your first question about whether young people are ready to embrace the digital age, I have to bring it down to Uganda. I have to give my perspective in relation to Uganda. And you have to first understand the demographics of the youth in Uganda. The biggest demographics of the youth in Uganda are in poverty. And why is this very prominent? My point, because with poverty comes a lack of education, a lack of knowledge, and to bring the point home, it comes down to digital literacy. So the biggest issue the young people in Uganda have is in regards to digital literacy. And by digital literacy, I don't necessarily only mean the technology. It is beyond the technology. It is knowing your rights. What are your rights as a person when you're sharing your information on these technological platforms? Because we must understand we are in a very centered system right now, where all our information are in a central point. I was the other day, sometime back when I was opening my bank account, I remember they asked me for they didn't ask. I gave them my email address, and that's when it dawned on me. This is the same email address I've used to open almost everything, every information, be it my X, be it my Twitter, be it all my information. It is there. It is centered. So they can get my information, my bank details, when I was born. Everything is centered now. So when I say digital literacy is beyond the technology, it's about knowing your rights. Is it protected? Are there laws in place that are protecting the young people from being taken advantage of? And are these laws being implemented? Because there's having the laws there and the laws being implemented, those are two different things. And there's follow up whether the laws are really being implemented. So it's important for us to have digital literacy, and by digital literacy is we must be intentional about this. Not just I see a lot of young people. Every time I use a border or go down to my village in Gulu or anywhere, the young people are on TikTok. The young people are in love with TikTok, and for them, as long as they can come on TikTok and see their videos, it is enough for them. But they don't know their rights. They don't know by sharing this TikTok, by liking something, by saying something. Their data is being stolen, it's being shared. So we must be very intentional. And this is intentional. Is the government must be intentional, the society, the churches. The church should be very instrumental in with your congregation. We must have maybe set aside days where we educate the congregation and the masses on their rights, on what they could be affected, and even this itself, having discussions on expenses that are being documented and hopefully written a review about. All this all goes down to digital literacy, which I I'm very happy to do. So we must be very intentional on digital literacy, and we must also, as I said, we must understand privacy awareness and data protection and the laws. There should be also a balance between convenience and individual rights. What do I mean by convenience and individual rights? I mean, as I said, you must know your right, and because we like by convenience, I mean, just early in the morning, I was buying electricity at my place, and all I did was just put in a few digits, put in my details of the yaka, put in my PIN, and poof, they gave me my electricity. But I have to know, are there people who can access this information and use it and follow up that this person is using this amount of money to do this and this? Am I protected from all that? And all that is very, very, very important. So we must also need to know, we should ensure that the young people to participate in conversations about technology policies, because as a country, and when you look at it from a political lens, everything dawns to policy. We are run by policies, and policies are made in the legislative assembly, which is parliament. So that's why me as a youth, I've taken it upon myself to participate in elective politics, because it is very, very prominent that we, the young people, are in these offices and giving our views that are very strong and standing on them and ensuring that these policies are followed up. Because if there is no one ensuring that these policies are being put in place and followed up, it's like what we are doing right now is what I would describe as hot air. It's nothing. So we need young people, these officers, who are very cognizant of the issues that are facing the young people in regards to the digital technology and the digital world, and ensuring that these policies are in place and followed up. Because it might seem a very small issue, and I believe 90% of the young people don't care about, or not that they don't care, they don't really follow up to know about their digital rights. All they care about, can I access? The only time they'll raise issues about the digital world is when the internet shut down. That's when you see disgruntlement. You see, aside from that, as long as I can access my internet, I don't care. So we must be very, very wary of these policies in place, and we must also know how digital systems can create opportunities, but also risks if poorly governed. As we know, digital systems are here to better our lives. They are here to make our lives better. That is the honest truth. None of us would love to live in the Stone Age period, where right now even this conversation isn't possible because of the technology. So these digital systems are here to make our lives better. But whereas they're here to make our lives better, we must ensure that they are properly governed. They are being used in the proper way. The policies are being followed. All these players, the top players, the UCC and all these, are not abusing our rights, are not selling our data and enriching themselves from it. And all these are being followed. So, and as I said, all this, it's very important for young people to take up political spaces, political offices, because this is where the policies are made. This is where really the change is really made. Dialogue is important, but power, office, and influence as a young person is second to none. So if you're a young person in the office, if you're a young person in the space, please, when the electoral cycle comes around, don't shy away. Go and contest against those 𝗫𝗘𝗡𝗢𝗛𝗛, and never know you find yourself in offices that can really put the issues we are discussing into play and forever change our lives. So to answer your second question, when you talked about Africa moving towards greater digital integration, how can the young people ensure that technology remains a tool for empowerment rather than becoming a system that limits opportunity, participation, or freedom? As I say, technology is here to make our lives better, to empower us as the young people, to make this conversation possible, to help us spread, as I say, the word of God. It is very, very important and prominent on that. But we must also understand that for it to empower us, we must be very intentional on making it empower us. So how do we do this? So as you know, digital integration is in play. Digital integration is where everything is being integrated digitally. We have a cashless system now. I was in Kenya a year ago, and Kenya is right now in a cashless system where even the woman who is selling tomato on the roadside has her Momo details there on the on the tomatoes. So you buy your tomato, you send her M-Pesa, chap. No need to hand her money. When you use Uber, the Momo details are there. Kenya is in a cashless system, and this is our immediate neighbor. So sooner or later, whether we want it or not, we shall become a cashless system. So it's upon us as the citizens to first be aware of this digital integration and how it can empower us. As you can see, with a cashless system, money is swift, the economy is boosted, paying of taxes is easier. For monitoring of the government when they're monitoring all the systems, it is very it's very easy. And yeah, though we risk the issue of the digital footprint, which is part of the things why we are. This is a very interesting conversation. So, how do we ensure it empowers the young people? We must ask questions about how systems are designed and governed. As I said, is governance and policies. We must always know how, and we must engage CSOs. We must engage offices. We must constantly engage and have this conversation. We must never sleep. We must never stop. And that's how we can effect change. So we must know how the systems are designed and governed, and who follows our digital. It's safe. Is it being sold? And in case a big government body breaks these laws, do they face the wrath of the court? Are they tried and justice is formed so that the society knows that, oh, we are really protected. Not this where someone is caught and the issue is forgotten. So it's very important for us to keep on having this conversation and on how these things are designed. As I said, we must demand for transparency and accountability. So there should be transparencies. We must access all this information easily. So you must access the all the information. And I know we as Africans, we don't like to read. Hello? Hopefully
yes, I can hear you. You can summarize.
Okay. Let me just summarize in a minute. So as I was saying, we as the young people, I encourage us to be more readers. These terms and conditions that you just agree to, take time and read it, because that is where you sign off your rights in terms and conditions. So it's important that that is seen to. And my final point is just let's support responsible innovation. If you see someone is bringing up an innovation that can protect our rights, please encourage them, support them, and push them forward. And with that, I would love to submit, and thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Stephen. So from your points, you've emphasized on active participation, but also a concern really on the issues that are facing the young people. But somewhere in between, you mentioned the lack of knowledge. And I want to bring in Mark on that element of knowledge. So some observers connect the rise of universal digital identity systems with prophetic concerns about the future of global control. And there seems to be a pattern that redirects humanity back to the Tower of Babel, the Babylonian system, as well as what we see in Revelation 13:17. So, Mark, how should believers approach these discussions with both spiritual discernment and wisdom?
Thank you very much. I hope I'm audible. Now,
Yes.
no, thank you. Now, the first approach that believers should have is to understand the purpose and the place of prophecy. The spirit of Jesus Christ, or the testimony of Jesus Christ, is a spirit of prophecy. That what actually brings us Jesus Christ, or what really testifies that there is Christ, is a spirit of prophecy, the ability to foresee. So the apprehension of some of the believers and the Christians to prophecy has have them falling exactly where Satan would want them to be, because exactly that is what his engineering has been over the years, to vulgarize and create ability to see into the future, to look into the future. But this is supposed to be, or it should be, a character of every Christian, the ability to act or behave more than just a normal being and be able to see the future. Because, like I said, the scripture says that therein is the testimony of Jesus. So if there is Jesus in you, one of the things that it should be able to do is to bring out the ability to see the future, and the ability to see the things that are concealed. Well, when you talk about the Tower of Babel, it goes back to my earlier submission that the core purpose for the digital revolution that we are having on our hands right now in this dispensation is to create that oneness, like it was at the Tower of Babel that was building the Tower of Babel. But suffice it not that voices have come out and strongly warned against that move, because first of all, as a Christian, personally, I would say that it is an effort in futility to try and work against God. It never works out. There is no history that any person has stood up against God and has been successful. So the attempt to create a Tower of Babel infrastructure like it was then is bound to fail. It is bound to fail, and the earlier Christians take exception to that approach. The better for all of us. Now, for me personally, I have listened in awe and followed a voice that I've considered. I have really taken time off to study and understand, and carefully come to the conclusion that I can depend on that voice. And for me, one of the insightful issues, or one of the insightful prophecies, so to speak, was one that was given by a man I have really come to the conclusion that he knows what he's doing and he knows what he's saying, and he is in touch with the divine order, and his voice clearly, and his prophecies, when I've looked into them, I have been convinced that they are authentic. So there's one that was given by Prophet 𝗫𝗠𝗫𝗏 on the 7th of January 2025, I believe, and he talks about the digital currency and the whole digital revolution in the UK and its purpose and the people who are behind the rolling it out. And for me, it was very instructive. I mean, any other person who's listening, you could put your biases aside and just go to the YouTube channel and look for that prophecy. I think it's a prophecy of 7th January 2025, talking about the central bank digital currency that was going to be rolled out in UK and how that would have an effect. And for me, the voice speaks to the liberty, speaks to how this is an agenda to curtail the liberty of Christians, and how it is engineered by specific people whose agenda is really to make sure that they dominate Christians or they dominate any other person. So, and it draws parallels where, you know, you have in the Bible, you have different kings that have labored so much to make sure that they controlled humanity based on the supply. So the best way to control man, the best way to control Christians, the best way to control any other person, whether you're a Christian or not really, the best way to control you is to create a control or to create a gate at your supply. So that if I am able to cut off your supply, for example, if we say digital currency, let's before even we go to the digital ID, let's start from the digital currency. If you have a digital currency that you have no control over, if I have 20,000 shillings in my pocket, it is 20,000 shillings in my pocket, and the only way you can affect my 20,000 is to devalue the currency, and of which that would not be targeted to me. It would mean, oh, you would have to come and take it from me physically. That means that wherever I go with my 20,000 shillings in Uganda, I am able to transact. But where, like the example that has been given of what happened over the weekend on Sunday, someone sits somewhere and is able to freeze your 50 million on your account, and you are unable to transact that whole day. It should speak to every other person who's really sober and is mindful about their liberty. So this goes again to the digital IDs, that I am able to actually delete your humanity. I am able to wake up one morning and say, your passport is deleted, or your humanity or your identity as a human being is deleted from the system, and you are unable to do anything. So what that means, therefore, is that there will be people that are going to call the shots. Now, what is more scary for me is that, and I have labored, I've labored to point out this issue before, that the people who are at the forefront of digital revolution or IT technological revolution are not states whom we have empowered to, govern society on our behalf. The people who are at the forefront of revolution, of technological revolution, are private individuals, whether it be X, the platform or the infrastructure that has been built by Elon Musk, whether it be Jeff Bezos, whether it be Oracle, whether it be all these infrastructures are being run by individual private players who are ahead of national framework, who are ahead of actually most of these people are being taken on by nations. Nations are depending on their technology to advance their cause. And so what scares most is that you're going to have someone who's controlling your supply, and it is a private individual whom you have not given power to rule over you. And so that would mean that those individuals whom you have not given power, whose agenda you do not know, who you cannot hold to account, because whatever they are doing as a private player, and you're submitting everything of yours and your livelihood and your personality and everything to them to control you. And it is very easy for such a person to hand over. The perfect example, of course, would be the case of Cambridge Analytica, and how to use the information that most people, were freely giving on Facebook to influence an election in the US. Now, that is just a sneak peek. It is nothing compared to what all this could be. But what is most important, to go back to your question, is in that context, therefore, what do Christians have to do? First of all, the voice has been very clear that what you have, the voice, for example, in the prophecy that I have talked about, the prophecy given on the 7th of January 2025 about the digital currency and how its aim is subjugation, its aim is domination, its aim is to make sure that you are dominated, or human beings are dominated by a particular group of people who sit and decide and say, let's do this, let's do that, let's do this. And so, in as much as the picture seems grim, one of the core importances of prophecy is that once it comes, one, it gives a sneak peek of the future, but also it is a call to action for Christians and those who believe. But also importantly, for any person who's out there and is skeptical, it gives you a chance to look into it and search deeper and talk to God about it and seek your own path. Because you see, prophecy is supposed to be proved. And that is why I say carefully, I have carefully taken time to learn and understand and come to the careful conclusion that this is a voice that I can depend on. So prophecy is supposed to be proved. If it cannot be proved, or the voice you're listening to cannot be proved, then you're lost. But in this context, where a voice comes out, it is a call for Christians to rise up and do the right thing and come against the agenda of subjugation. One thing you have to know is that God is a God of liberty. He's a God who seeks the liberty of his children. The people who have actually come out to say, no, I don't believe in God, and have actually put themselves to fight against him. And he has left them. He has left them to make the decision that they would do. And he says in his word that I've put before you life and death. This day, please choose life. And he tells you what to choose. So he's a God of liberty. He's a God of freedom. He's not a God of subjugation. He has not created man to subjugate man, but he has created man to be free. And he bids us to come to that freedom. And that's why Paul probably writes and says that, labor so much to enter into that rest, which rest is free from every shackle or any other shackle. So for Christians, if I could answer the question in summary, is that the voice has come out. One, we might be different. We might be in different places. There shouldn't be a limitation and a look at, a look down on other nationalities or other different peoples, wherein it is important that nations should remain with their boundaries and there should be a prominency of nationalism. But that does not mean that we should be headed into a space where we forsake our liberties and our freedoms for the sake of handing power to particular people, because we know where all this all ends. Where all this all ends is that where power to control all humanity is concentrated in 2 or 3 people. At the end of the day, the 2 or 3 people, there will be one that will seek to dominate the 2 or 3 people. And at the end of the day, you'll find that even where we have given power, willingly or unknowingly or ignorantly, to 2 or 3 people, those 2 or 3 people will also give it to one person, and that therein is the rise of the Antichrist. That is how the Antichrist rises, from my understanding of the Bible. So, to really answer the question, the work of the Christians from the prophetic voice that I have put out there, please, I implore anyone who's on this call, after here, spare a minute and just go to the YouTube channel and look into those prophecies and prove for yourself and study and see if it makes the prophetic sense to you. Because there's a record and there's evidence to some of these things that have been said by Prophet Elvis Mbonyi. He's a voice that I can comfortably and confidently say that I have studied over time, and I've realized that I can really depend on those prophecies he has given. So it is a call on us to rise up and say no to some of these things, digital IDs, and it is possible, because one of the things that has brought down the downfall of Keir Starmer, for example, in the UK, has been the backlash that came with the introduction of the digital ID, the mandatory digital ID. So it is not to say that it cannot be done. Any Christian, that would be a perfect example. So For me, I believe that the Christians ought to rise up and say no to the scheme that seeks to take away their freedom. If that answers the question.
Thank you very much, Mark. It does answer the question. And from your submission, it's very clear that God has actually cast light through the voice of God that you've been talking about. So I will bring back Joanita. I hope, Joanita, you can hear me. So my question to you is, as countries are seeking to strengthen border security while they're making travel more efficient, what practical steps can governments, technology providers, and citizens take to ensure these systems remain secure, respectful of people's rights? Please take 2 minutes to respond to this. The voice is not coming out very clearly. Could you make a few adjustments?
Now?
Yes, very perfect.
All right, good. Thank you. I think for governments, I believe governments should only collect the personal data that is genuinely necessary. That's data minimization, only the data that is necessary for border control. Then government should ensure clear legal safeguards, oversight, and accountability in regards to this data. And government should build resilient systems with manual fallback procedures when systems fail. A contingency plan that works. When there's an internet shutdown, is there backup? You know, when somehow the system is overwhelmed, is there backup? Regular, and then I believe the government should also regularly audit AI and biometric systems for accuracy, fairness, and bias. And then for our technology providers, the people are providing the infrastructure for all these systems, priority should be on cybersecurity from the design stage, from the time they're designing these. Priority should be on cybersecurity to ensure that our data is safe and it's not being compromised at any point. They should, anticipate these things and mitigate them straight from the design stage. Then there should be a transparency about how the biometric data is being stored, it's being shared, and it's being protected. And I believe this would build trust on our end as we're submitting the data. And then systems should be built that are reliable and privacy conscious, because our privacy has to be protected. This is our data and we have a right to privacy. Then for us, the citizens, we should understand what personal information we are providing and why. Are we asking these questions? Why are you providing your fingerprint before you're giving it? We should also endeavor to stay informed about the privacy, our privacy and data protection rights. And this is a call to us all on this call to go out and get acquainted with our National Data Protection Law Act, and all those laws and acts that are out there, so that we know when to give this data and when to withhold it. Then we should report identity fraud and misuse. Immediately it happens, there should be a prompt reporting system, and action from also the government should be just as prompt. We should also participate in these public conversations about digital governance rather than accepting every new technology without question. You have a right to information and you should exercise this right as a citizen. All right? Yes. And, technology has been used to enhance border security, that's for sure. And it's facilitating legitimate travel. But it should not erode trust and finance and fundamental freedoms. It should not. The challenge now is finding a balance where security, efficiency, and human dignity can reinforce each other, without control and subjugation of people like the former speakers have been speaking about. I think that would be my submission.
Thank you very much, Joanita. So my last question to you, Stephen. Much earlier, you made a call to the youth to involve themselves, to participate actively. And so my question is, what practical steps can young Africans take, and what should leaders do to build societies that welcome diversity, protection of human dignity, and also ensure digital transformation benefits everyone at the end of the day? Please use 2 minutes for that.
Okay, thank you. I realize our time is really fast spent, so I'll try and be as precise and concise as possible. So to answer your question straight away, is the first and most important thing is we must reject xenophobia and misinformation, because xenophobia breeds diversity, and diversity is the root cause of every societal problem. As a politician, I'm a Pan-Africanist by nature, and I believe Pan-Africanism preaches unity as opposed to division. The xenophobia is the root cause of division, and so we must reject it. We must see it doesn't breed into our society, and we must also reject misinformation. As you know, it's hard to verify each and every information on social media, because you open your social media, TikTok, X, whatever, you're not certain whether the information you're seeing is verified, or it's just a conspiracy, or someone is pushing a narrative or an agenda. So we must always know, we must reject misinformation. So we must, that's one of the ways we should also engage in informed discussion rather than emotional reactions. Like this, what we are doing, this is this is the first step of resolving the problem. So we must continue this. We must always engage in informed discussions so that we can see to it that we have a better society. So we must also, as I said, learn about our digital rights and responsible technology use. So it's very important to do digital literacy. Let the masses, let the young people know their rights. It's very important. So with your rights, you know when to hold the government or anybody accountable, and you're very confident when you're using this digital equipment. So we must also use technology to build our communities, rather than deepen the division. As I said, Uganda is a very diverse country. We have multiple nationals living in the country, contributing to the economy, and equally competing with the locals. As we have individuals from all across the region. So we must see to it. We must not deepen division in our communities where we have propaganda, hate speech towards these individuals. So if I may just finalize with two more points, is we must create clear protections around personal data and digital identity systems, and we should ensure young people have a voice in shaping the digital future. As I made that my last point because it is very important the young people have a voice. When you look at the demographics of the country of Uganda, the young people constitute of 80% of the populace. That means this is our country. That means we can shape it, we can unite, we can do anything as long as we are one as the young people. So we must ensure we have a voice. This is the first step of us having a voice. Let's continue having these discussions. Let's continue giving other young people voices. And with that, we shall see to it that we have a society that is digitally literate, a society that can really coexist with the emerging digital trends. With that, I beg to submit, and Madam Moderator, if you could allow me to exit right now because I have a small pending issue.
Thank you very much, Stephen.
Okay.
All right. Thank you so much, Stephen, for those submissions. So our time is fast spent, but we will be closing within the next 10 minutes. And I wanted to bring in Mark for his last question before the panelists return to give their parting remarks on the same. So my last question to you, Mark, is in this age of using technological advancement in identity and border management, what principles should guide nations leaders and citizens. So that security and technology do not come at the expense of human dignity and freedom. Over to you, Mark. 2 minutes, please.
First of all, leaders ought to understand that men might do whatever they want to do, and you can ignore God, but you cannot ignore the consequences of listening or ignoring God. You cannot run away or escape from the consequences of ignoring God. And so it is important that leaders get to understand that they are entrusted with a duty to lead the people in a free society, or to emphasize that freedom and liberty, and where it fails, they will be held accountable for that failure. But also it's important that leaders listen to or seek that God, because as we conclude, it is important that also we have a conversation about what real leadership means. Leadership is not about going to the people and consulting what they want and leading people to where they want. Leadership is about going before God, like it was with the days of Moses or in the days of old, going before God, listening to the voice of God, understanding the oracles or what God is saying or what God desires for his people, and leading the people towards that freedom that God has established. And that is true leadership. So true leadership in this context, therefore, means that every leader needs to listen to God. And for me, like I had earlier said, and to every other person on this call, to really take off time and put your biases aside and listen or watch, go to the YouTube channel of Prophet 𝗫𝗚𝗎. For me, that has been convincingly and with results, a voice that I can say in this dispensation brings out the voice of God. So leaders ought to listen to some of these voices. So, for example, for me, if I were to tell any leader out there of society, and I have done so to a couple of leaders, and I know that most of the leaders that I've talked to in my line of work have actually paid heed to Prophet 𝗫𝗚𝗎 and his prophecies and the things that he has said for the future. Some that will probably not come out to say it openly, but they look out, and some have actually reached out to me and asked me, what does Prophet 𝗫𝗚𝗎 say about this and this and this? What does he say about this? I have been in the past facilitating policy framework, and the people that I was talking to and the people that I was leading on that project kept inquiring what Prophet 𝗫𝗚𝗎 was saying, and what if he had given a prophecy in that line. And that for me is critical for every other person who is a leader, that it is important that you identify the voice of God, seek it out, seek out the voice of God. God can speak to you, but where there are people that he has entrusted with the mantle that they will speak. And when we go to the ancient path and the days and the men of old, the leaders of old who depended on the prophets, and the accounts are very clear in the Bible that those who actually depended on the voice of God, or the sure people that God had entrusted in that office of prophet or of the prophet, actually their leadership outlasted them, and it led to prosperity of their kingdoms and their nations. So for me, it is important that in this day and age we listen to a voice that has distinguished itself as a voice that is clearly from heaven. And on this point, this particular point of digital IDs, the mandatory digital IDs and the digital move, the voice of Prophet 𝗫𝗚𝗎 has been very clear that this is aimed at subjugation. It could probably come out in a different way, but it could seemingly look very beneficial. It could seemingly look very good, but on this particular point, the voice of God through Prophet 𝗫𝗚𝗎 has been that, this one is aimed at subjugation. It is not aimed at liberty, at freedom, no matter how beautiful it looks, no matter how easy it looks, no matter how, because of course that's how it's packaged. But the actual thing behind it is that it is aimed at subjugation. It is aimed at taking away the liberties and freedoms of people and to subject humanity under a cartel of particular individuals that have positioned themselves to take away or dominate humanity. So for me, the parting shot really to leaders is the most important thing is that when you're leading humanity, or when you're leading men, or when you're leading societies, you're leading them to the liberties that God has given us, or the God has established. So you ought to listen to God and to know the channel that you're taking when you're leading people on that path into freedom and liberty. And for me, the sure voice, as I conclude, the sure voice that I have listened to, that seems to me that is convincingly and with evidence, really, this is not just about belief, there is evidence to it, is the voice of Prophet Elvis Mbonye. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mark. Joanita, please go ahead and give us your parting remarks in 1 minute.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you so much, everyone who has taken the time to listen to us this evening. Thank you so much, Mark and Stephen in his absentia, for being part of the panel. In closing, I'm inclined towards Mark's submission, where, back in the day, when people were going to war, they would consult from the prophets. And while Mark was submitting, I went ahead and read a scripture where King Jehoshaphat asked, is there not a prophet in the land? We are privileged to have a prophet. Who can guide this? Because I believe for this for the digitalization of all systems of immigration to be successful, we need to put into play all players, the legal infrastructure, the spiritual infrastructure. What's God saying about it? What are the legal implications? What are the technological implications? How beneficial is it to us? Do we know our rights as citizens? Is the government protecting our data? What data is necessary so that we know that what we are giving is what is needed and it is well protected? And then there's a spiritual guide over us who's watching over it, making sure, who's giving us direction. Like Mark has said, back in the day, the ancient parts, the prophets gave direction. Maybe this is the time where we call in all the spiritual leaders. The Prophet Elvis Mbonye has given prophecies on the CBDCs, on the digital agenda. And this is the time where they come into play and we really consult and seek the voice of God, while we put also our governments to task to protect our data and to make sure the systems that they've put in place are actually working. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you very much, Joanita, for those parting remarks. And yes, we've come to the end of this conversation. We apologize for stretching a bit, but thank you so much for everyone who has tuned in and everyone who will be able to catch this recording at a later time. And thank you so much to the panelists, Joanita, Stephen, and Mark, for the conversation, for contributing to the conversation and sharing your insights. It's been a wonderful discussion or conversation that we've had, and I guess from my perspective is that the conversation should continue even beyond this space. But also I will borrow the words in a paraphrasing form that were shared by one of the panelists. So as we create at the end of the day, we reflect back on what the scripture has said, that God has given us. He has put before us life and death, and He has urged us to choose life at the end of the day. So we have to make the choices. So even as we make these choices, we reflect back. Do they protect the freedom of the people? Do they bring out the liberty? Yeah. So let's continue with this conversation in the different spaces as well as the communities that we are part of. Thank you so much for being part of the conversation. This is Digital Agenda Forum. Good evening, good morning, and good afternoon, everyone. Bye.